Assalamu alaikum everyone. Welcome to this lecture on contemporary literatures. Today we are going to discuss two of the most influential and rapidly growing approaches in 21st century. And these are literary studies, trauma theory and post-humanism. Okay. So these theories are widely taught and researched in universities such as Oxford and Cambridge University, Harvard, Yale and many other leading institutions. They have transformed the ways the scholars read literature and understand the human experience. But before we begin, I would like you to think about two questions. Can suffering ever be fully represented in language? And secondly, are we still living in a world where human beings occupy the center of existence, or has technology begun to redefine what it means to be human? So these questions lies at the heart of our discussion. The part 1 of our lecture is the trauma theory. Okay, the trauma theory emerged during the late 20th century and it owes much to the work of Sigmund Freud and contemporary literary critics like Cathy. Unlike traditional criticism, trauma theory does not merely ask what happened to a character. Instead, it asks, how does an individual remember a painful event? Can traumatic experiences be narrated completely? Why do some memories return repeatedly in the form of dreams, flashbacks, or fragmented narratives? According to the Cathy Korath, trauma is not simply an event, rather it is an experience that overwhelms the mind and resists immediate understanding. Okay? So she famously refers to trauma as an unclaimed experience. In other words, if we will explain, the victim does not fully comprehend the event when it occurs. The understanding comes later, often through painful repetition. Okay? So, there are Freud and the unconscious, the foundations of trauma theory. You can say that the foundations of trauma theory can be traced back to Sigmund Freud. Okay? So Freud believed that traumatic memories are often repressed into the unconscious mind. Okay, you can see these slides. Okay, however, these memories, the memories which are talked by the Freud, these memories do not disappear. Instead, they return in unexpected forms such as dreams, nightmares, flashbacks, anxiety and compulsive repetition. So this phenomenon raises an interesting question, and that question is, can we ever truly escape our memories, or are we inevitably haunted by them? So the next theme of this theory is belatedness, one of the most important concepts in trauma theory. It is belatedness. Belatedness means that traumatic events are understood only after they have already happened. Okay? So what does it mean? The experience is delayed. Imagine a soldier returning from a war. At the battlefield, he survives and continues functioning normally. Okay? But months or years later, memories begin to surface. Suddenly, nightmares, fears and psychological distress emerges. So thus trauma does not belong entirely to the past, it constantly intrudes into the present. Okay? The next concept is repetition and flashback. Another essential characteristic of trauma, it is repetition. Victims repeatedly relive painful experiences. These memories return involuntarily, okay, through dreams, through memories, through fragmented narratives. This explains why many literary texts dealing with trauma are nonlinear. They are filled with interruptions, gaps and discontinuities, because trauma itself disrupts the chronological time. It's the collective trauma that is the next key concept. Trauma is not limited to individuals. Entire communities can suffer collectively. Wars, colonialism, slavery, partition, genocides, and forced migration can create cultural memories that continue for generations. Therefore, trauma theory also examines how societies remember and transmit sufferings. This led us to another important question. Do nations remember trauma in the same way individuals do? Or does collective memory operate differently? Okay, so next we can move to the applications of the literature and applications of trauma theory. Trauma theory has become extremely influential in literary studies. For examples, the Kurt Vonnegut's Slaughterhouse-Five explores the psychological effects of war. Toni Morrison's Beloved investigates the lingering trauma of slavery. Khalid Hosseini's The Kite Runner, it examines guilt, memory, and emotion wounds. Okay, similarly, South Asian partition literature it reflects collective trauma experienced during the division of India and Pakistan. Through trauma theory, literature becomes more than storytelling. It becomes a testimony to suffering. Okay. Then we have the critical reflection. At this stage, we should ask ourselves, can language adequately represent pain, or are there experiences that remain beyond words? These questions remain one of the central concern of the trauma theories. Okay, so these are basically the key questions that every human should ask from themselves. Okay, so to conclude, trauma theory and this theory, the trauma theory and all the contemporary literary theories, they demonstrates how literary criticism continues to evolve. Okay, literature is no longer viewed merely as entertainment. It has become a site where scholars explore memory, violence, technology, identity, and the future of humanity itself. Perhaps the most important lesson these theories teaches us is that being human is neither simple nor fixed. Okay, human experience is fragmented, memory is unstable. Okay, technology is transforming our identities, and literature remains one of the most powerful ways through which we attempt to understand these complexities. Okay, thank you very much.